let's turn the clocks back a little bit to your beginnings and your musical influences. And although you're American, you have English parents.
Yeah, both my parents are from England, so most of my family.
Did they have much of an influence on you in terms of your approach to things?
My dad's mother, my grandmother, she always had harmonicas around the house, which were my grandfather's. He passed away. Harmonicas were laying around the house, so when I was real young, I always used to pick those up as a baby or as a kid and play with them. So it's pretty cool that you could blow on it and it made a noise. And as a kid, you like to be annoying and run around and make loads of noise. So that was really cool. She played piano as well, so she always had like a keyboard in her place. And she was singing, like church songs and all this kind of stuff. So I started playing piano with her keyboard. And then at one point she bought me a keyboard. It was like a small Casio or something, and it had lights on the keys. And they would light up for when you were supposed to hit the key. And they had cards for the different songs you would learn. She bought me all this classical music. So the first song I learned to play on the keys was Elise. It was pretty cool. That was probably the first instrument type influence. Everything else was like music my parents were listening to, So it was like the Beatles and the Stones or James Brown or Otis Redding or just all different things. In Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, people were into a lot of different styles of music, mainly country, So you had to go to bigger cities to find a lot of that. So growing up in Iowa, then coming to England, every year since 3 months old, bringing back this different music, and I'd kind of get looked at funny by a lot of kids, There's getting into punk rock a lot as well when that hit the scene, because I'd come over and it just looked so different from the norm and the mohawks and everything, and that was kind of what I locked onto, I think.
But it was exciting though, wasn't it?
Yeah. As I got older, we moved to Colorado from Iowa. I noticed it was a bigger city, right? So Colorado Springs, and just outside Denver a little bit. But I noticed more styles of music and people dressing differently in these different styles of music, but a lot of them were hanging out with each other as well. So I'd see a lot of punk rockers hanging out with hip-hoppers. So then I started buying loads of hip-hop CDs,
Talking of things which were a bit different, your paths crossed with Slipknot quite early on in their career. You were DJing at Dot Fest. You were wearing Elvis glasses, a Michael Jackson T-shirt, and your shorts were falling down, apparently.
I don't even know that. That's great. I remember the Elvis glasses. I loved those.
You made a great impression, obviously.
Yeah. I'd been DJing for a while, actually, before that. It wasn't like early on in my DJ career. I was actually DJing at raves and clubs, playing to crowds of 5,000 or more, and up along with different headliners. So when the band asked me to check them out, they were playing to like 500 people as opposed to me playing to 5,000. So it was a big decision to make for me at the time.
They were asking you about recruiting for a DJ in the band.
Well, I'd been hanging out with Paul, who was our original bass player. He worked at this club called Friends Club, which was like the only hip-hop club in Des Moines. And so I'd go there a lot just to like hang out, listen to music, dance, whatnot. And he would work the front door. He's like the doorman. And it was kind of a sketchy place. It was like, even in Iowa, there's, urban type rough things happening, you know what I mean? So there would be like shootings and stuff like this happening down there. Paul would sit at the front door with this old rusty 22 to like watch the front door. Iowa's like, it's like a normal thing. Like people, like my uncle, one of the first stories he told me about going to Iowa was like classic cowboy thing. It was like he was in this bar and there was two guys playing cards at the table, and the young guy got up and accused the old guy of cheating. He says, "You say that again and I'll plug you." And he goes, "You're a cheater." And he shot him under the table in the leg. So it's like, this is the kind of Western Iowa thing. It was like when I was younger, they were still 10 years behind everyone, Now it's a lot more current. But he was always telling me when I'd be hanging out with him, and then I'd watch the door for him when he would go use the toilet or something. And he keeps saying, "Oh, you got to come check out my band. You got to come check out my band." And of course, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, cool. I'll check out your band sometime," and I would go off to watch the DJ or hang out on the dance floor or scratch in the booth or something. And he kept bringing that up every time I go hang out with him. And I wasn't really getting the point, is that he was actually asking me to come and like bring my decks and jam with them, you know. But his way of saying it was he wasn't to the point about it. He just kept saying, you got to come over and check out the band. So eventually our buddy Frank, who owned the bar with our buddy Andy, they were partners in the bar. And Frank pulls me aside and he goes, dude, you really need to go check out Paul's band. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's the big deal? You know, like, how come everyone keeps talking about this band? Because other people had kind of been mentioning it to me. It was just going over my head like a bomber, you know. And he goes, they want you to try to DJ with them. I went, oh, what? Like, why didn't he just say that? You know? So he goes, they're asking me to DJ for him now because they don't think you're interested. And he goes, I don't have a clue how to DJ, so you've got to do it. So I listened to Frank, and I went, and I hit up Paul, and I went. And then it was pretty much stuck to them after that. You know, I was analyzing the whole thing as much as I could.
So you were in the band, and in those early days, their approach was pretty incessant, wasn't it?
The band actually practiced in the basement for a year. No one allowed to come, no girlfriends, no one could listen, no recordings allowed. They did that for a year straight before attempting to play one show.
Yeah, eating, breathing,
they wanted to
sleeping.
hone the craft for a year before doing anything live in front of anyone.
Do you think it's important to be so focused, so self-obsessed in a way, to be able to create and innovate?
I don't know if it's so much as self-obsessed as much as when you decide you like something and you're going to go and do it. It's if you've got true interest in it, and it's not just for the come up. You want to know everything about it. Your curiosity is peaking, you know. So you want to know how everything got to that point, what inspired it, what goes into making it, and all these other things. It's an interesting point because for me, I try to learn everything I can, even if I'm not going to pursue it all the time. So the example I like to give is if you go to like a film school and want to be a director, they make you take a class called Respect for Acting, even if you don't want to be an actor. So you go take that class, and then you now, after completing it, understand the position of the actor. So when you're coming in as a director, your understanding of their emotions, their feelings, the things they're going through, what it takes to do what they're doing, and you're able to communicate on a higher level with that person because you know their position. So you're able to put it to them in a way that they understand it. Same thing for music. If you want to be a vocalist and all your interest is singing, you should go take a production class. Because when you're working in the studio and you're working with a producer, if you're trying to explain something to them, if you've gone through what they've gone through, even if on a small level, you're going to be able to communicate that much easier to them. They're going to understand you straight away instead of just pointing at the screen and, can you make this do that? Or, you know, that's... Once you get to a level where you're in a studio and you're paying for the time and the label's loaning you money and all of these different logistics involved, you can save yourself a lot of hassle, a lot of time that you're spending for that studio rental by understanding how each person in the studio works because you've taken a course or been in their shoes for a year, whatever it takes to understand every aspect of it. For me, like when I'm doing my own music, I produce it, I engineer it, I record everything, I'm playing the instruments, I'm doing the scratches on it, I'm doing the singing on it, the backup vocals, I mix it, I do everything except master it. It's the only thing I don't do is mastering, I send it out. But by teaching myself all of these things, when I go into a studio situation, I can save a lot of time and heartache, and everyone understands each other on the same level, as well as sometimes on the worst side of it is people are trying to rip you off. So if you're sitting there in a studio and you've got an engineer working the desk and the Pro Tools for you and you're trying to explain to them as an artist what you want, they'll take you the long way around everything. So you're racking up more studio time. It sucks, but it happens. But if you have some knowledge on this, you can call them on it. When they say, oh, I don't know if we can do that, we're going to have to do this and this, you can say, well, what about if you just use that? oh, I didn't know you knew about that. And then they go, oh, and then you're moving forward. So it helps you on both ends to communicate well with someone, then also call someone on their BS. So that's, I think, as an artist, it's just that the desire to get the product you want the way it needs to be, and the quicker you can do it without cutting corners,
I think it's having that vision as well of where you want to be.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about what you guys have is when I was growing up, they didn't have like DJ producer school or whatever. They didn't have colleges for that. They had music colleges, but they weren't teaching it the way that it's being taught today, because there's so many different genres of music that are accepted in the mainstream now. And I'm 43 now, so I dropped out of high school in order to be able to do what I do, because there wasn't anyone teaching it at a school. I had to drive hours and hours, take road trips. I rode in the trunk of a car just to go watch a DJ play in Chicago. I sat with a sign that said, I need to go to Chicago for a party. Please take me. Like, finally I asked, you're going there? Yeah, we're going there. I've got to go. You got room? No, we don't have any seats left. Do you have a trunk? Yes, I have a trunk. Is it empty? Yes. I'm riding in your trunk. So 6 hours in the trunk of a car just to go watch a 1 hour set of my favorite DJ, just so I could get the studying in. These are the things I had to do in order to acquire all the skills I have. Talk to these other DJ and get a second to even talk to them for 10 minutes and ask them about their production and other things. You guys have multiple classes available to you. Take advantage of every one you can, even if you're not really interested in it, but it directly relates to what you're doing and that you're going to have to work with people like that. Also, those skills just end up adding to what you have already, and before you know it, you've thought of something no one else has thought of, because you're combining all of these things.
Your performances were very, very physical.
Yeah.
You used to jump off balconies. I mean,
Yeah.
At the Astoria in London on your first UK show, you did 2 balcony jumps.
Yeah, I've jumped off almost every balcony in Europe, in the UK. Where were we? There was one that I jumped off of, and then they wouldn't let us come back because it was so dangerous, the jump. It was maybe 30 feet, and they were just like, no, we couldn't go back there for a minute, but they sorted it out and let us come back. But, yeah, there's, depending on what you're doing, there's a sacrifice you make, in order for the live part of what you're doing to be not just a show, but an experience. That's the thing, is when people go to a concert or a music event, they want to be taken away from their environment, their everyday environment. They want to feel like they're somewhere else, entered a whole nother world. And you should be able to feel that experience from the beginning until the end of the concert. So, like with us, it's really difficult because you're doing all this aggressive things, especially me. And I broke both my heels on stage at a concert. It was the All Hope Is Gone first show for that album, kicking off the tour, kicking off the album. And third song into it, I jump off the back ramp that goes behind the drummer, like the Bruce Dickinson Iron Maiden type ramps, right? That's what I call them, Iron Maiden ramps. But I was running off that, and I jumped off it loads of times, get a good sky anywhere, 13 to 15 feet up if you jump up and then down. And a lot of stages are made of this kind of like rectangular squares. It's like a plexi kind of plastic or something. So they have a little bit of flex and give to them. So always when jumping off of this, I expect this landing. At this place, there was a concrete floor. So, which I've done before, jumped onto a concrete floor, but the way you land is vastly different from those two types of surfaces. Usually I would go and inspect everything and do a test jump if I was going to jump from it. If there was a balcony jump, I have security before the show come down. I give him a spot where he has to sit. He takes the entire hit of the jump so that the kids don't get hurt. Yeah. So I land right on his face, basically. These are all types of things I have to do before the show, before doors open, early in the morning, run around, check the surfaces out. I didn't do any of that. I came in really cocky, thought, we're a few albums in, I don't need to practice anything, and I paid the price. So always be prepared, as a little side note. Don't ever think you're ahead of the game, maintain that. So anyways, I jump off this and I land, and I'm going over Paul and to the side of Craig, and I land, and I can just feel straight away something's not right, Wham! And I try to take a step, and I can't move my leg. I can't move either of my feet. It's like they're cemented to the ground. And then I fall to the ground instead of taking a step. And there's a video. You can find a video of this. And I just start headbanging. I've just shattered both my heels. And I start headbanging because the song's not over yet. I'm not trying to break character. That I got to stay devoted through the whole thing, right? Because the minute the crowd sees something's wrong, they're taken out of the experience. Oh, what's wrong? Has he gotten hurt? Is he okay? They're not paying attention to the song anymore. So I continue headbanging. End of the song comes. I stand up. I get myself up. And I just kind of waddle over to the side of the stage. And then I get into where, no one can see me. And I fall on a security and our production manager. I got an arm around each. What's wrong, Sid? What have you done? What's going on? I think I broke my effing feet. That's my exact words. And I'm laughing. I kind of laughed when I said it because it sounds absurd. But they're like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure." So they're, "What do you want us to do?" I said, "Get a bar stool and stick it behind my turntables. You're going to carry me around the back. I'm going to go back up on stage, finish the show. 45 minutes left still. I finished that show on my feet. With the exception of the stool behind me. I told him, get an ambulance out back, have the ambulance ready to roll, open, paramedics, but let them know I'm going to finish the show. So they get me, and there's another video that's a different video is after I broke my feet, and it shows me walking out on stage, and I'm trying to hang on to the table. And I'm trying to see, I decide I'm going to test the waters, and I'm going to go try and walk around out front. And the second I think about letting go, I thought, no, okay. I come back around again, and I get behind. And for the rest of the set, I put one leg up on the stool and keep one leg down, so to the audience it appears like I'm still standing. And then I'm using my elbows to support the rest of the weight. And then after 5 minutes, I would go like this, and I'd put the other leg up. And I'd finish the rest of the set like that. No one knew that I'd hurt myself. No one in the band even knew until the show was over. The audience didn't know. It hurt to do that. But when you're trying to set a certain standard, and the way that a live show should be, the live experience, I didn't want that to break. So the thing is no matter what you're doing, whether it's extreme, hopefully it's never that kind of situation for you. You might not be doing aggressive music, but there's somewhat of even if you're being yourself to the audience, there's still some kind of mask, so to speak, that you wear for the audience so that they can enjoy the entire show. If you were being your true self, it wouldn't be as much of an experience, right? Because they need to lock onto the music. So no matter what you're doing, that's a big thing, is to, when you're doing performance art with your music, you need to maintain that illusion so that the people are in it through the whole experience. Everyone walks away going, man, I felt like I was somewhere else. And that's definitely a big deal.
Yeah, I've watched the videos are on YouTube, and once you know the story, it is uncomfortable viewing, watching him walking your way around. It really is.
Yeah, I watched the video of the actual jump. Took quite a few years to surface. There wasn't one from the crowd that showed the actual jump until just over this last year. I saw it on the first tour we went on for this album. And I remember watching it, and I literally came to tears. Like, whoa, like, who is that? Who the hell is that? But that's the switch you turn off, you know. You turn off and you maintain that person that the audience knows for the duration of the performance.
How do you prioritize what you're doing, and how do you remain focused in what you're doing?
I guess the priority is me, which makes it kind of tough because then every project I start, I'm 100% in on all of them, you know. And it gets hard to balance, obviously, with Slipknot that comes first, above and all everything. I don't know, man. I just do it, I guess. I can't really explain it. I mean, this is what I do for a living now, right? So I don't have anything else in my day except for doing my job, you know, doing my music. So when you're doing all these other things in your early years of your music career, and you're, you know, working a job and doing this and helping family and whatever you've got to do, your time's limited that you get to spend actually doing your craft, you know, at home to your own time. Once that frees up, as long as don't procrastinate anything, you're just burning, you know, hot fire. You're going. It's like when you see people, they blow up or whatever, and then they take kind of a break after a few years, and they kind of fizzle out, and then it's like a lot harder for them to come back again. It's because the procrastination comes in, and the laziness, and I've made it, you know, I can take my time now or whatever. But it's not as true as you'd like it to be, thinking like, I can just live off that fame now. You've got to keep it going over and over again, because there's other bands like us that are still around, yeah, and they'll never go anywhere because they've made their staple. But a lot of them don't have repeat successful albums. And that's because they do this part where they kind of just give up for a second, you know. That's never happened with us. Every time we put something out, it gets bigger, we have more fans. And although sometimes it seems like we've taken a long time for a break in between albums, because for as long as we've been around, there's only 6 albums out. We tour each album 2 to 3 years. And then at the end of that touring cycle, we take a little less than a 2-year break. But then there's songwriting going on during that break. And that could be, you know, going on in 6 months to a year of all your time. So when you really look at it, we're not taking a lot of time off in between albums, the actual off time to yourself, where you're not building another album. So recently we've been developing new ways of trying to get ahead of that. So on tour right now, we have in the back room, back hallway, whatever, there's the sign says dressing rooms. Then you follow that sign into the hallway. Then there's several rooms down the hallway. It's backstage, normal kind of arena, just boring rooms, right? They're like locker rooms, technically. So we'll have a room that's hospitality, which is food and everything for all day while you're running around, snacks, coffee, juicer, this kind of stuff. And then there's a jam room, which is where band members can go in and warm up before the show. So a lot of the time they'll like play the set before they play the set. But it keeps them, you know, now they're ready. There's rooms like this all the way down, in the wardrobe room with all our outfits and everything. And then there's a room called AV room, which is audio video. So there's a guy that goes in there that's taking pictures and filming us at every show. He's on stage. He has reign of the stage for the whole show. He travels with us. So he's in there editing and getting videos done and stuff for social media. And then next to that rig is a Pro Tools with an Antelope interface. There's a little setup right there. And then when you open the folder, Slipknot folder, and then there's a bunch of folders in that folder, and it'll be, you know, Clown, Jim, Sid, New Guy, V-Man. So in those folders, everyone can start ideas and songs. So all throughout the day, people are coming into that room, sitting down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, just whatever. you'll come in, there'll usually be a song up on there, like Clowner 08, 008. And I'll go in, I'll do a save as, so it's his idea is still there, but then I'll do something and I'll add something to it, or maybe I'll rearrange what he's got, or do something, and I'll save as Clowner 008 B or Sid mix or something like that. So everyone knows it's different. And then, V-Man might come in and lay a bass, Jim might come do a guitar. Anyone can come in and add to that stuff. And then most of the time, it just keeps moving that way. Usually no one comes in and goes, oh, I don't like that, let's go back to the old one. If anything, it's been dismantled and moved everywhere, and now it's in like 5 separate parts that sound like, with gaps in between them, so that they're not all together. And then I might sit down for 2 hours and smash it all together, or maybe 5 minutes, however long it takes. But we keep doing that, so then there's more ideas for each folder. I'll go in, make a new folder, and put an idea down. When you leave the room, you leave whatever you were working on the screen. That ensures that the next guy that comes in is going to listen to it before he opens something else. They're like, oh, I like that, and then they add something. So we're staying way ahead of the game that way. There's enough ideas for a whole album already. We'll do it until there's enough for 4 albums, and then whittle it down to just the best, of all of those ideas.
That's quite interesting, because I think it shows that you're keeping the creativity flowing all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, it was simple because everyone was younger. Not everyone had families, like wives and kids, and Sid Clown did. But not everyone had, wives or girlfriends or kids or all these different logistics that would take your time, And so we were all able to be there all the time, always, 6-7 days a week, practicing, writing. The first album, we were all together all the time in the same room, even when people weren't tracking, when you were doing your retrack for everything after you got the scratch tracks down, the overdubs, we'd still even all be around for that, But then as you get older, things happen, family members might get ill that you have to help take care of. Other people have families now, kids. Some people might have kids with, 2 people. There's like a lot of logistics that start coming in as you get older. Each person's family becomes bigger and bigger with each year, and their friends and businesses, and your time becomes more limited. So those days where we were all able to commit every single minute to each other and be in that room, they're not around anymore. So this is like the new way of getting ahead of the curve so that we can maybe try to get back to something like that once we get to the studio experience.
What we'd like to do now is open it up to the floor. So if anybody has any questions, there's somebody's put their hand up at the back already.
I saw that guy in the toilet. It's not like that. It's not like that.
I was just wondering, obviously from self-titled to now your new album, Weird Of Your Kind, your sound, though you've got the Slipknot sort of copyright on it, the sound's obviously evolved and changed throughout the years. Did you feel that's a change that the band wanted to make, or was it something that you had to do due to the music industry changing?
There's not it's never that deep of a thought for us. We're just creating the music we want to create, So it's like I never learned to read music. When I was young, they taught me in school, but I ditched it really fast. I played everything by ear. And there's a lot of rules and stuff that get put on when you're learning music theory or any of these kind of things. The best thing is when you're learning that stuff to keep in mind that sound is infinite, right? It moves constantly in both directions forever. There's no rules to it because it has no start or ending. It exists everywhere all the time. you have to experiment. You have to just do what you're feeling inside. If I play something and I do whatever, and then someone tries to go, oh, you can't do that. Why not? Oh, because this is this key and this is that. But I go, oh, but I like it. You can't do that. But I like it. It makes me feel good. This makes me feel better. It feels right to me. So that's a big thing you got to lock on to when you're learning all this stuff is not to lose your I don't know, emotional side of it. Like you can feel when something moves you, you know. So I think that's like the big thing with music for me is it has to move you in some sort of way, whether it's physically or emotionally inside. But sound is a movement. It's moving, and it's like I said, it's linear. All sound comes from a flat line. That's it. All sound. This, your bass bumping down the street, all of that comes from one sound. It's how it's manipulated in our environment is why we hear it the way it is. So it has to ricochet off stuff. It has to bounce off things. It has to interact. So that's movement that's happening. So you should feel that inside of yourself somehow, because that's when you're really getting sound manipulation to be what your frequency is, you know?
If you were to start off in the industry again today and wipe everything clean, what would you do to try and make it in the industry?
Start all over again. I don't know. I just always go with my heart, you know? So I never really think of the matters like that, because I would just do what my heart tells me, so I'm confident that I would go in the right direction, you know? I just kind of follow the energy, you know? I got a positive energy watching out for me above, and I got to have faith in all of that all the time, you know? That no matter what I'm doing, that as long as I'm being true to myself and true to others, that I'm going to be in the right direction that I need to be.
What gave you the idea of coming up with the band name of Slipknot? Like, where did you get that from?
It was the title of one of the songs. So there was a song called Slipknot, and then we opened every gig with that song, and it became like a thing. We had to open the show with that song, and it just ended up calling the band that.
You guys have got such a big band, like, you know, 9 people, which is, let's say, like, not the average.
The White Wu-Tang.
Yeah. What?
That's what we used to call ourselves, and our first manager would get mad. You're not the White Wu-Tang. Clown would be like, yes, we are. Well, they wanted the 3 drummers for it to be kind of like this tribal feel, so it kind of it would cater to like these far back musical roots in human history, right? And then Craig used to play guitar for Slipknot, and then when Mick came in, they had Mick take his place, and he moved to samples. They got to 8 guys, and they were like, you know, this is perfect. And then I think, you know, through dudes talking, probably mostly Paul, was like, yo, there's this crazy kid that scratches, you know, like, and we should get a guy that scratches in the band. And then there was like, you know, there was the fame of Biscuit, and that was kind of like they had a DJ, so they're like, man, how are we? I think Paul met me, and they thought, well, they've got a guy, but we're heavier, and like, you know, they're doing more kind of a mainstream metal, hip hop rock, where we were like straight metal. And what was it? A Fear Factory. You know, they had the keyboard player, but he would do a lot of stuff that sounded like scratching. So there was just a lot of that happening in the metal world with, you know, people doing electronic or different sound manipulation. So I think once Paul had met me, he was like, yo, I like this guy. Like, let's bring him in. When I met Clown, he was trying to tell me, you know, oh, the band's crazy. We wear masks. I'm like, oh, masks, crazy. Got it. Check. And he's like, you know, no, I don't think you get it. You know, like, we wear masks. And I'm like Mr. Bungle. Awesome. And he's like, no. He's like discouraged, you know. He goes, yeah, but we're crazy. I'm like, okay, crazy, got it. And he kept trying to like, I don't think you understand. And I was like, listen, man, I'm the craziest guy you've ever met in your life. And so I'd been practicing with him a little bit, and then I went to a show to see the show. They were like, you got to come see the show. I'm like, yeah, I want to see the show. It's like, you know, just to join them and not really know what the live show's about. So I seen the live show, and I'm sitting maybe 3/4 back from the stage, pretty small venue, maybe about the size of this room. And Ross Robinson, coincidentally, was at that same show. I didn't know who metal producers were back then. I was on, like, hip-hop producers. So he was watching that same show, which is cool because that means he saw this. There's a song called Tattered and Torn, and Clown starts that song. And he says, kill me, like loud and long and drawn out. He starts the song, and then the music comes in after he does the vocal. So what I didn't know is that he liked to come down in the pit on this song back in the early days. And he would, you know, the diehard fans that were also dressing up, you know, they had their own outfits. They'd wear the same kind of, like, coveralls, but then they had their own masks, and then they would wear name tags. So there was, like, Pogo the Clown and, like, different sorts of types of different personalities of the band with different names in the crowd. So he would go down, and then they would try and attack him in the pit. So then he would, like, wrap him up with the mic cord and drag him across the floor, and, like, you know, they'd be going at it down there. So this is this song for him, and I had no clue. He starts the song, and I can see him at the front of the stage, and I can see it through the mask. He's looking right at me. He's, like, pointing, and he's doing the vocal. So I just remember him saying, oh, no, man, we're crazy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to show you who crazy is. I start leapfrogging. Everybody, you know, leapfrog. You kind of, like, jump over. So I'm doing that, but, like, the punk rock version of that is, you know, you get up to crowd surf. So I'm doing that over everybody. And now he's starting to come from around his drums. And I guess he said his plan was to come down and beat the crap out of me. So, like, to let me know, like, you know, he thinks he knows what crazy is, type of thing, per our conversation. I get up to the front, and I'm climbing over people, you know, and then falling back down, and then up and leapfrog over. And then I get up off someone's shoulders, and I grab it. He's getting ready to take his first step off the stage. And when you got these masks on, you can only see, like, really limited. You got to go like this to see everything. So he's looking down to step off the stage, and I just grab him by his head, and I headbutt him. I headbutt him 6 times in the head, which was kind of poetic because he's number 6 in the band. We all got numbers. So I headbutt him 6 times. He pushes me away as I'm coming in for the next one. I was going to try and knock him out. That was my objective. He pushes me away. He falls down to a knee. He crawls back to Joey, and he goes, I don't care what anybody says. That dude's in.